The NCAA gave Malik Thomas another year of eligibility, and the WCC's leading scorer should spend that year in Spokane.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Happy Friday, and welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Today's episode of Locked On Zags is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Folks, you can turn any TV into your Xbox without a console required. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. Well, folks, Malik Thomas is now available in the transfer portal. Can the Zags outbid Virginia for the 20-point per game scorer out of San Francisco? We're going to talk about that. Also, could a reunion with an old friend in the transfer portal be in the cards to help shore up Gonzaga's front court? We'll talk about that, and we'll close out the show talking about the Zags still in the NBA playoffs. Some tremendous stuff from Andrew Nembhard, Chet Holmgren versus Julian Strawther, what that matchup has looked like so far, all that to close out the show. We're starting the show with the news that came out on Wednesday, I think. Malik Thomas, the San Francisco guard, 19 points per game last year for the Dons. He has been in the transfer portal since shortly after the portal opened, but was waiting on the NCAA to grant him a waiver for an additional year of eligibility. That, in fact, happened on Wednesday, now making him immediately one of the more sought-after players in the transfer portal. Gonzaga is known to be in some level of contact with Thomas. There hasn't been a lot publicly reported, in part because up to this point, it was kind of theoretical if he was even going to be playing college basketball next year. But now that he is available, we do know Gonzaga has been in contact, although there is a heavy favorite to land him out east in the Virginia Cavaliers and new coach Ryan Odom. Talk a little bit about who Malik Thomas is, why he got that extra year of eligibility. Thomas is 6'4" guard from Fontana, California. He was a four-star high school recruit who committed to USC in the 2021 recruiting class. He had offers from Arizona, Washington, and Pepperdine before choosing to go to USC. He only played 9 games as a freshman, and this is where the story is kind of odd, because most of the time when players are granted an extra year of eligibility because of not playing very much, they got injured. They dealt with injuries. They missed part of the season because of that. That's why they're able to get that eligibility. Malik Thomas was not hurt as a freshman at USC, and he appeared in 9 games. Usually the threshold is a little bit lower than that. 9 games is like a third of the season. I do think eventually the NCAA is going to have more hard and fast rules regarding redshirting for basketball, which they have for football, but they don't have for basketball right now. But I do wonder if part of Thomas's argument and the appeal that they made to the NCAA to get this waiver was that while he did play in 9 games, Thomas played 18 minutes total at USC. That's nothing. That's nothing. Like Gonzaga's walk-ons, the Colby Brookses, the Will Graveses, the Matthew Langs, Rem Bakamus, etc., they play. Even if they only played nine games in a season, they typically play 3 to 4 minutes per game. Like 18 minutes is virtually nothing. So I do understand the argument from that perspective. He scored just 3 points, only took 6 shots. So it was more or less a completely lost season for him, even though he was not hurt. Do I think it's a bit of a slippery slope precedent-wise? Yes. I do think it's a slippery slope because Thomas played a full season at USC after that, 2 full seasons at San Francisco. Like, I can understand the argument of like, why does he get an extra year after already having played, but we'll see if the NCAA, if there's any level of actual hard and fast rules that come out of this sometime down the line. But for now, Thomas is now available. And like I said, his role increased as a sophomore for USC. Played 27 games, averaged 8 minutes a game. Still didn't play all that much, still didn't play all that well. So then he transfers to San Francisco. And so many players. Brandon Pajemski is the most notable example from Illinois to Santa Clara, but we've seen it with many others who've transferred to to the WCC after playing at a high major program and immediately thriving. Paulos Morauskas for St. Mary's last year, coming from Arizona, is a good example, but so is Malik Thomas, because his first year at USF, he was fantastic. He played 33 games, started 21 of them, averaged 12.5 points, a little under 3 rebounds per game, shot 40% from 3 in his first season at USF, and that was on 3.5 attempts per game. He was 53% on 2-pointers and 86% from the free throw line. He had 23 against Gonzaga in San Francisco and then 22 against Gonzaga 2 weeks later in Las Vegas. 2 of 6 20-plus point games that Thomas had as a junior came against the Zags. And then he returns to San Francisco and blossoms into an absolute star. He was great as a junior. He was even better this past season for Coach Gerlofson and the Dons. 34 games, 32 minutes per game, 19.9 points per game, as close to a 20-point per game score as you can be. 4 boards, 2 assists, 1.5 steals. Shot almost exactly the same from 3. He was 40% as a junior. He was 39.4% as a senior, but that went from 3.5 attempts per game to over 5 attempts per game to still keep that level of efficiency is remarkable. 48% on 2-pointers, 85% from the free throw line. And folks, that was on 6.5 attempts per game. Very, very, very Caliph Battle-esque as a free throw shooter, not just in terms of his volume of free throws, but also his efficiency from the charity stripe. He led the WCC in scoring. He was an all WCC first team member. He was second in the conference in steals, first in the conference in free throws made and free throws attempted, third in the WCC in win shares. He also, once again, did excellent against Gonzaga. It's not surprised the Zags are looking at him because he killed them when he played them as a junior, and he did it again this past year as a senior. He had 27 points with 8 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 steals against Gonzaga in the WCC tournament. He also had 25 points and a steal against Gonzaga in Spokane, 2 25-plus point games against the Zags. He also, very strangely, played Loyola Chicago twice last year, once in the regular season and once again in the NIT. And in both those games, Malik Thomas had 35 or more points. He had 35 against them in the non-conference, and then he had 36 against them in the NIT, going 17 of 17 from the free throw line. I'm sure Drew Valentine is over there just hoping that wherever Malik Thomas ends up, it's not a team that's playing Loyola Chicago this year, because he clearly has something against that Ramblers team. And maybe he hates Sister Jean. I don't know what his deal is, but he really played well against the Ramblers this past year. He also had 34 points in an overtime win over Santa Clara, 34 points at the Beasley Coliseum in Pullman against Washington State, 25 points and 5 boards against Memphis. This dude plays up against high-level opponents. Now, Gonzaga would love Malik Thomas. The problem right now is that there is a heavy favorite to land the 6'4" guard out of the transfer portal, and that would be Ryan Odom and the Virginia Cavaliers. This has been known for a while. Before it was known that Thomas was getting that extra year and getting the waiver approved, which again only happened a few days ago as we're recording this, it has been long discussed that Thomas is a hard lean to Virginia to go play for Coach Odom, who of course used to be the coach of VCU. Prior to that was the coach at Utah State. Turning things over. Virginia's had a very successful offseason already. They bring in Dallin Hall from BYU. They got a couple other marquee transfers coming in as well, kind of a hard rebuild to replace the Tony Bennett era, which was so successful for the Hoos. And Malik Thomas would be a crown jewel for this program out in Charlottesville, a huge addition for them if they're able to pull it off. We know that Virginia did land Duke Miles in the transfer portal briefly, and then he decommitted from Virginia. Don't think that has anything to do with Malik Thomas necessarily, since that happened a few weeks ago. But Duke Miles now a target for Gonzaga, so could end up being some good news for the Zags if Malik Thomas does in fact go to Virginia instead of coming to Gonzaga. He would also be the 4th guard from the WCC to join the ACC, which is just a weird kind of fun fact, I suppose. If this were to happen, Malik Thomas will start at point guard for Virginia. Lamar Washington will likely start at point guard for Georgia Tech. DeMarco Minor, who is from Oregon State, will start at point guard for Pitt. And then Nate Kings will start off the ball for Syracuse, also from Oregon State. So it could be 4 guards starting in the ACC next year who are in the WCC this past season. Just a sign of how good the WCC is. You could argue it's a sign of maybe the struggles of the ACC as well, but we'll see if obviously this ends up happening, because Gonzaga is going to do everything they can to get Malik Thomas to go, instead of going from San Francisco all the way to Charlottesville, just come north a little bit, come up to Spokane, play for the Zags. The fit is very obvious. Thomas is kind of a great blend of what both Nolan Hickman and Caliph Battle brought to Gonzaga. He is outstanding at getting downhill. He's outstanding at getting to the rim. He's an acrobatic finisher through contact. He's also, as we mentioned, adept at getting to the free throw line, shot 86% from the line. So he's a very, very good free throw shooter. Again, 17 from 17 against Loyola Chicago. Like, he is somebody who can get to the line at will. And in Gonzaga's offense, where he's going to get to attack closeouts, where he's going to get out in transition, where he's going to have more open looks from three because the defense is going to be so focused on Graham Ike and Braden Huff, it is not hard to see how Malik Thomas would absolutely thrive in Spokane. He would get to do the things that Caleb Battle did, broken plays, attack the rim and try to get to the line, get out in transition, score around the rim. He would also do what Nolan Hickman does, be a float around the perimeter, get open looks, relocate, catch passes out from the perimeter or from the bigs down low and hit open threes. Again, he's 40% three-point shooter 2 years in a row at San Francisco. He could easily shoot that or better than that in Gonzaga's more free-flowing offense. The fit is very, very obvious. He's also a very good defensive player, 1.5 steals per game last year. He would provide great two-way capabilities for Gonzaga alongside Braden Smith, alongside Jalen Warley. I suspect he would push the other addition, Adam Miller from Arizona State, to the bench, giving Gonzaga some more shooting and floor spacing off the bench. If this were to happen, Evan Miyakawa has Malik Thomas as one of the better players available in the transfer portal. 96th percentile overall in college basketball for his projections this upcoming season, 97th percentile offensively, 90th percentile defensively. Scoring volume, 99th percentile, three-point shooting, 96th, free throws, 96th, steals, 90th. There's just no debate that Malik Thomas would be such an unbelievable addition to the Zags. Would love to have him. It'd be the second year in a row Gonzaga brings the WCC leading scorer to Spokane. Didn't work out great last year with Michael Ajayi. I'm a lot less concerned about how it would go if they were to land Malik Thomas. But I suspect, unfortunately, that Virginia being so far ahead in the lead right now is going to make this real tough for Gonzaga to make a push here. But man, oh man, would that cap off a great offseason for the Zags if they were able to bring Thomas up north to join Gonzaga for his final season of eligibility. Well, Gonzaga still needs a backup power forward, and a former Zag could be the solution in the transfer portal. We're going to talk about that and more coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. You can dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. Play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. And if you already have a console, well, no problem. A Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take you or your kids' games wherever you plug in. Maybe you have no interest in gaming. Well, great news. The Fire TV Stick is the perfect go-to for all of your family's general entertainment. We have one on every TV in our house personally, and this platform, it's super easy to use and navigate, and also really customizable. Probably my favorite part of the Fire TV Stick. So head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K second generation, Fire TV Stick 4K Max first and second generation, and Fire TV Cube third generation. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast, still coming at you here on a Friday afternoon to close out the week. First, we talked Malik Thomas, who is available in the transfer portal after being granted an additional year of eligibility from the NCAA. Virginia heavily involved in trying to land Malik Thomas, but so too is Gonzaga. We'll see what happens out of that one. But want to talk once again about Gonzaga's backup power forward position, because right now they have 4 players in the front court. They have Graham Ike and Braden Huff, who are both expected to start. You have Ismaila Diani, who's going to step into a bigger role after showing flashes of excellence last year. And then you have the incoming freshman Parker Jefferson, 3-star recruit who originally committed to Minnesota, decommitted, and is now joining the Zags for next year. The thing is, though, all those guys are really kind of traditionally centers. I think Braden Huff's going to play more at the 4. Maybe Graham Ike plays more at the 4, but they're both going to start. So one of them is going to be playing that kind of traditional power forward role. But when you look on the bench, Diani's pretty clearly a 5. I have a feeling that the Zags are viewing Jefferson in kind of more of that traditional back to the basket, get him the ball as an offensive hub type role. So he's probably not going to play a lot of 4. So it means the Zags don't really have a 4 on the roster. Maybe Jalen Warley can play some small ball 4. Maybe Steele Venters can play some small ball 4. But I think ultimately that's still an area of need for the Zags. So what I want to talk about now is a former player who is in the transfer portal and a guy that hasn't proven enough at the college basketball level to be a definitive, hey, this guy could clearly come in and play a role for Gonzaga right away. But depending on what Gonzaga feels they need out of a backup power forward, perhaps a reunion with Pavle Stosic would make some sense. Stosic, as a reminder for those who maybe remember the name but don't remember a ton about him, he's a 6'9" forward from Serbia. He played professionally for Huesca in the Spanish league in the 22-23 season, averaged about 3.5 points and 3.5 boards while with them. And then he joined the Zags very late in the offseason prior to the 23-24 season. It was announced by assistant coach RJ Barsh that Stosic was committing to the Zags on my birthday, September 23rd, which is the latest that I think Gonzaga's ever gotten a commitment from a new player. I mean, the season started 6 weeks later. Stosic did not redshirt his first year at Gonzaga, his only year at Gonzaga, despite coming into the program so late and being international. I mean, I'm not sure that he even had a chance to fully learn all of the offensive and defensive sets for the Zags. In fact, I'd be very surprised if he did, just based on the timing of his arrival in Spokane. In his lone season with the Zags, he played in 14 games, about 3.5 minutes per game, scored 14 total points, grabbed 11 boards, had 3 blocks, 2 assists, and a steal. He also had 11 fouls committed in those 14 games, 5 turnovers, 6 of 10 on 2-pointers, 2 of 4 from the free throw line. He did take 6 3-pointers. He did not make any of those 3-pointers. So the ability for Stosic to be a floor spacing power forward is entirely theoretical at this point, as we have not seen him actually do that at this point. He had 2 4-point games during his time at Gonzaga. He had 4 points, 3 boards on 2 of 2 shooting against Arkansas Pine Bluff, and then he had 4 points, 2 boards on 1 of 1 shooting with a pair of free throws against Pacific. After the season, he hit the transfer portal alongside Luka Krajinovic, alongside Colby Brooks, and Stosic ended up landing at Utah State, which was a little bit of a surprise to me, a kid who didn't have attention from power or from high-profile programs, or really, as far as we know, any Division I programs before Gonzaga signed him. They signed him so late in the season. He does very little on the floor. Those players, Luka Krajinovic was a better player for Gonzaga, played more minutes, played a bigger role, and performed better. There's zero debate about any of this. And yet Luka Krajinovic did not find himself a landing spot at the Division I level. He was rumored to go to UIC, which is still a not as good of a program as Utah State. Krajinovic, of course, ended up just going back home to Croatia to play professionally, whereas Stosic ended up at Utah State in the transfer portal. However, he did not play for the Aggies this past year. He redshirted the entire season and then entered the transfer portal about a week after it opened in late March. And so now he's available, and we haven't really heard anything on Stosic. We have not seen any, these schools have contacted Pavle Stosic in the portal, or he's, narrowed his list down to these schools, or he's visiting this school. There's been nothing. There's been radio silence on social media, on message boards, anywhere else out there. We don't really know the deal with Pavle Stosic. And frankly, that could mean that he's going to pursue a professional career and be done with the college basketball space. Again, that's what Krajinovic did last year. It's also what I thought was going to happen to Jun Suk Yo right up until the minute that he committed to Seattle U. So I don't want to assume that we know what's going to happen with Pavle Stosic or really any of these players until we have some kind of definitive answer one way or another. However, I understand why it might seem a little silly for Gonzaga to pursue a player who barely got on the floor for them and who did not get on the floor for a good but not as good as Gonzaga Utah State program this past season. But it does make sense in the sense that Stosic fills a need on Gonzaga's roster, and not a need of we're not asking Pavle Stosic to come back to Gonzaga and then play 15 minutes per game, or even 8 minutes per game, or even every game. I don't think that the role that Gonzaga has kind of available for backup power forward is necessary. It's not like they need to replace all of Michael Ajayi's minutes or all of Ben Gregg's minutes with this player. They don't have that many minutes to go around. If you assume Braden Huff and Graham Ike both play more minutes next year than they did in the past, which is an assumption that is you kind of got to bake in the fact that they both have shown the ability or the issue of getting in foul trouble, which could limit their ability to play big minutes. We also don't know that Ismaila Diani is going to be ready to play, 18 to 20 minutes per game on a regular basis either. I think if we assume that he can, and we assume that Ike and Huff can both play closer to 25 minutes per game, and Diani's given you 15, 18, 20, and Jefferson's given you something, there's just not a lot of other minutes to be had. So you bring in a guy like Stosic. The main kind of selling point is that he's now familiar with the system. He's been in the system for a full year. He understands what is asked of this position. He went through it all in practices. Then he went to Utah State, got a different vision, got more work. I know he didn't get game action, and I know that does hurt, just the scouting of like, how good is he really? How much has he improved since he was at Gonzaga? It's hard to know that outside of anecdotal stories from, Utah State coaches and players, and that kind of comes baked in with some bias as well. So it's definitely a risk. It's definitely a risk. And certainly if Gonzaga can go out and get like a Cade Tyson from North Carolina transfer, or even some of the other kind of maybe more notable power forward players available in the portal, if those players are willing to come to Gonzaga for what doesn't appear to be a super significant role, then yeah, I think you definitely go out and get those guys. But if the staff believes in Pavle Stosic, and they believed him in enough to go all the way across the world to bring him to Spokane, if they still have that belief in him and have that spot available and are willing to trust him to play a small role on this team, knowing that it's not a big role, and he's willing to come back to school here, I don't know. It doesn't take that much squinting to see how this could work. Is it the perfect solution? No. Is it going to excite the fan base out there? Probably not. Certainly not the way some other players in that spot could. But would it be a way for Gonzaga to bring somebody in who's got some comfortability, some familiarity with the system, who's maybe comfortable in the role that this is going to fill? Yeah. And I think that alone is at least worth considering for the staff, considering for us as fans that, hey, maybe this is something that could be kind of symbiotic and work for both sides here. I think it's definitely at least worth exploring for Mark Few and the coaching staff. Well, folks, speaking of former Zags, could former teammates Chet Holmgren and Andrew Nembhard face each other in the NBA Finals? It's potentially trending in that direction. We're going to talk about that to close out the show coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all my money go? Because between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's kind of easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. And Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it is a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. And instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan your long-term goals. And my family, with the two of us and our 14-month-old, you can bet that we really want to make sure we're on the same page financially. And thankfully with Monarch Money, it's managing money with your partner. It's smoother than ever before. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without all the added stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. Closing out the show with a Zags in the NBA playoffs update here, recording this in the afternoon on Friday. So we're going to talk about some games that are coming up in a few hours as we're recording this right now. First, Andrew Nembhard and the Indiana Pacers, currently up 2-0 in the Eastern Conference semifinals. The Pacers are the 4 seed taking on the 1-seeded Cleveland Cavaliers, and they got a 2-0 lead. That is very promising for Indiana. Nembhard has been great throughout the playoffs. Even last year, he was phenomenal in the playoffs. This year, he's been great as well. And in these first 2 games, he was excellent. The first game was a 121-112 win by Indiana over Cleveland. Nembhard had 23 points, 6 assists, shot 7 of 10 from the field in that game. He had a very strange line in game 2, which was a 120-119 win for Indiana, won by a Tyrese Halliburton step back 3 in the closing seconds. Nembhard had 13 points, 13 assists, 7 rebounds in that game. He also had a pair of steals. He also had 8 turnovers. It was close to a triple-double, 13, 13, and 7, but even closer to a triple-double with turnovers, having had 8 of them. But I think ultimately you're going to take 13 points, 13 assists from your starting point guard any given night, especially if he's tacking on 7 boards and a pair of steals as well. And like we said, Nembhard's been just incredibly good throughout the playoffs in his career. Last year for Indiana, they went all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. Nembhard had to step up with Halliburton hurt for a couple of games against Boston, and he played great. And overall last year in the playoffs, coming off of a good regular season, but where he didn't average double figures, in the playoffs last year, Nembhard in 17 games averaged 15 points, 5.5 assists, a little over 3 boards, shot 48% from 3. This year so far in the playoffs, in 7 games, Nembhard is averaging 16 points, 6 assists, 3.5 boards, shooting 50% from 3. Nobody likes a big game and a playoff series more than Andrew Nembhard. It has been so much fun to watch him have this kind of success, not just in the playoffs. He's had tremendous success in the regular season for Indiana as well, but just a really, really talented player who found his role, found his niche at the NBA level. Few thought that he would. He wasn't projected to even be drafted when the Indiana Pacers made him the first pick of the second round a few years back, and boy, do they not regret that decision at all. Game 3, between Cleveland and Indiana, 4:30 Pacific time on Friday. For some of you, as you're listening to this, that has already passed. If it hasn't, go check it out. It's really fun to watch Andrew get a chance to play against this good Cleveland team. Other series going on the west side in the Western Conference is the number 4 seeded Denver Nuggets taking on the number 1 seeded Oklahoma City Thunder, a matchup between 2 former Gonzaga teammates, Chet Holmgren and Julian Strawther. Denver won the first game 121-119 over Oklahoma City. Chet had 12 points, 6 boards, and 4 blocks in that game while shooting 5 of 11 from the field. Strawther only played 6 minutes in that game, but he had 2 points and a rebound. And then game 2 was a thrashing from Oklahoma City. They hung 149 on Denver, beat them by 43 points with the Nuggets scoring 106 in game 2. Chet had 15 points in that one, 11 boards, 2 blocks, was 3 of 8 from the field, but he was a perfect 7 of 7 from the free throw line. Strawther got more playing time in that one because Denver was down by 40-plus points. He had 9 points and an assist on 3 of 7 shooting in that one. Game 3 is also Friday night, 7 p.m. Pacific time. Chet has been a huge factor for Oklahoma City. Not only in this series, he was a big factor for them in their series against Memphis, which they won, which they swept the Grizzlies in that one. He was good for them in the regular season after missing. He played 10 games, missed most of the rest of the season, came back and played after recovering from his injury and was tremendous. And now he's been very, very good so far, having the very unenviable task of defending superstar Nikola Jokic for the Denver Nuggets so far in this series. Over back on the Eastern Conference side, the Knicks, the 3-seeded New York Knicks, are up 2-0 over the 2-seeded Celtics of Boston. This game 3 is on Saturday at 12:30 Pacific time. No active players from Gonzaga on these rosters, but Anton Watson was drafted by Boston and spent most of the season employed by the Boston Celtics, playing for the Maine Celtics on a 2-way contract. Boston opted to waive Watson before activating him to the roster. He then was picked up by the Knicks and did play in the regular season with the Knicks. He's not on their playoff roster, but if New York were to win not only the series, I'm sure Anton is very happily rooting for the Knicks right now over the team that cut him earlier this season. But if the Knicks were to win a championship, if they were to make that kind of run, I do think Watson would very likely end up getting a ring. So that'd be kind of fun for another Zags player to get themselves a championship ring. Game 3 in this series, like we said, Saturday at 12:30 Pacific time. And then the final series going on, Minnesota, the 6-seeded Timberwolves taking on the 7-seeded Golden State in what was a upset series on the Western Conference side. This series is tied 1-1 right now. Game 3 is on Saturday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. Again, no Zags in this game, but former Santa Clara guard Brandon Pajemski does play for Golden State. Obviously, Golden State also has the Gonzaga connection with Steph Curry, who beat Gonzaga in the NCAA tournament, Draymond Green, who beat Gonzaga at Michigan State in a regular season game as well. Brandon Pajemski started both games in this series for Golden State, played 31 minutes per game, averaging 7.7 boards, 4.5 assists. so far for the Warriors. Excited to see the continued battles that these two teams are having against Game 3 Saturday at 5:30 Pacific time. All right, folks, that's going to wrap it up for me today and for this week here on the Locked On Zags podcast. Thank you so much to those of you who have made this show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Special shout out to those everyday listeners. We'll be back next week. We'll continue to keep you up to date on the transfer portal happenings. We'll have hopefully some more updates on Ryan Nembhard and how he performed at the G League Elite Camp, which is starting today on Friday, going through this weekend. Maybe he'll get a chance to get invited to the actual NBA Draft Combine, which starts next week as well. Portal stuff, NBA draft stuff, all sorts of good stuff coming your way next week. Stay tuned. Thanks again. Have a fantastic weekend, everybody. And as always, go Zags.